In this list, we're using the Y for the long E sound on the end of these words. This is the most common way of writing the long E sound on the end of a word, especially a multisyllabic word. And sometimes you'll see EY, but there's only about 10 or 20 words that end in EY, so unless you know it's EY, use Y, because there are thousands of words that end with just the Y for the E sound on the end of these multisyllabic words. So we've got copy. You can highlight the Y as we go: study, worry, hobby, query, every, enemy, remedy, company, and necessary. So we've got some other things hidden in here too. We've got a short vowel sound for in copy, so we're closing the syllable off after the consonant. We know to use the C before an O for the K sound. If you need to, you can see a little C inside the O, that might prompt you. Worry, you've got that short vowel sound there. Hobby, now here you're getting into short vowel and doubling the consonant. There's not many words where we have a short vowel and we don't double the consonant. The general rule is short vowel, double the consonant. So just be aware of the ones that we're not doing that with. I've broken these words up into syllables for you to help you. So I've got copy, study, worry. So when we split a word between, and there's a double consonant, we usually do it between the two consonants, or if we have an R-controlled vowel, we're going to do it after the R-controlled vowel. So I'll mark those in a bit darker for you so you can see them, and you can put those into your words to help you spell them and break them down into their syllables. Now necessary, here you've got the E making the C make its sound, and you've got the double S there too, and you've got the R-A-R, necessary. We tend to give that a schwat sound, that R sound. We're not giving it its correct pronunciation, so just be aware of that. That's happening in a few of these words. Okay, so what do these words mean? Copy means to repeat something, or someone might cheat, look at someone else's answers to copy it. Study means, it could be a noun and a verb. It could be a room in a house that's used to work in, or to do to learn in, to do your homework in. And basically study means to learn something. You've got to study it. Worry means when you show concern or you think through a problem to make a decision to act on something that's bothering you. A hobby is something that you like to do for fun. A query is a question. Every means all or everything, all of something. An enemy is a foe or someone or a group that you may disagree with, so even countries can have enemies. A remedy is a cure for something. A company is a group of people that have got together to work on something, or to because they enjoy each other's company, each other's presence. Unnecessary means something is very important or needed. It's necessary. Right, let's just practice reading, sounding. We're going to syllabify these words because they're all multisyllable. Spell them, write them and check them. I'm only going to do one, so let's go. Copy, C-O-P-Y, cover it, C-O-P-Y. You can do a loop on the Y or not, you can choose that. Then check to make sure it's right. In this list of words, we're revising that the Y may make the long E sound at the end of a word. So we know a Y can be both a vowel and a consonant. So when it says E, I, or it, we know it's a vowel, and when it says y, we know it's a consonant. So in this one, because it's making a long E sound, we know it's operating as a vowel. So we've got copy, study, worry, hobby, query, every, enemy, remedy, company, and necessary. Really, the only tricky ones in here should be remembering to put the U after the Q in query, and in necessary, you've got the CE. The E is forcing the C to make its sound, and then because the E after it is a short sound, we know we've got to put double S after that. and then of course you've got the Y on the end. So sometimes I see children get confused as to whether to put Y or EY at the end of a word. There are only about 10 or 20 words that we commonly use in English that end in EY. There are thousands that end in Y, so if you're not sure, probably go for the Y, because there are so many words that just end with the Y there. And we're going to teach you which are the 10 to 20 most common words that end in EY, so you get to know what they are, and you'll need to remember them and then just apply this to all the other words. Now in this section here you're going to have to work out how to break these words up into their syllables, so you can clap them or tap them to work out how many syllables there are, and you can even draw some little humps to fill in the spaces if you want to, or just put a slash between the syllables. Now down here we're talking about homonyms. They're the same sound and spelling but different meaning, also meaning they've probably got a different form. So they could be a noun or a verb in each of these sentences. So if you use it as a noun here, you're going to use it as a verb here. Now we've made it fairly easy for you, so we've used the same word for both of these. So one will be in its noun form, one will be in its verb form, and the same word for these two sentences. So one where it represents noun, one where it represents verb. Down here we want to really push you into writing sentences to show the list word as both a noun and a verb. So you're going to have to write worry as it could be used as a noun and then as a verb. And you can finish the rest of those. You may need to discuss them or look up the dictionary if you get stuck, or Google them. And then down here we just want you to write 3 things that you do every day that are necessary. These words all end in the letter Y, which is the most common letter we use for the long E sound at the end of a multi-syllabic word. So we've got copy, study, worry, hobby, query, every, enemy, remedy, company, necessary. There are thousands of words that we use a Y for the long E sound at the end of them. Now what you have to do down here is write the following nouns in their plural form. Now just remember, if you have a consonant before the Y, you have to change the Y to an I before you add the ES. So just be mindful of that while you're doing it. Now then write a sentence using study in its plural form. So have a think about how you're going to do that, and make sure that it's used as, if you're using it as a plural form, that's telling you that study has to be used as a noun there. It must be a noun. Now, I might write that in a darker colour for you. Noun. Now down here it says write the past tense of the following verbs. So the verbs are worry, copy, query, study and remedy. Now the same as when you're adding ES to the end of a word that ends with a Y that has a consonant before it. When you're doing verbs or nouns, when we're adding the ED for a verb, you're going to change the Y to an I before you add the ED. So that's what you're going to have to do for each of these. Then complete the following sentences using verbs in the present tense. Now if you're writing in the present tense, you're going to be adding ing to the end of the word. So we don't change the Y to an I when we add ing, because we never ever have double I in an English word. Okay, the only word I think that we have a double I in is skiing, and that's a Swedish word. So the English rule is we cannot have double I in a word. So we do have to leave the Y in. We don't like Y's in the middle of words, but in this case we have to leave it in because we can't have that double I, and we still need that sound in the word. You can't go cop-ing, it has to be cop-ing. It's not stud-ing, it's stud-ing. So you still need that sound in there for the Y, so you have to leave that Y in. Now this is a bit tricky if you haven't kept up with apostrophes. So use each of the following words in a sentence. So we're showing ownership here. In enemies, we're showing that there's only one enemy that we're referring to, because we've left the Y in there, so that's indicating that the base word enemy is in its singular form, whereas in companies we've changed the Y to an I and added the ES, which is showing that companies is in its plural form, so it's not referring to one company, it's referring to more than one company. And you can see the apostrophe is after the S, whereas in enemies it's before the S. So they're your big hints there to know how to use them in their correct form in those sentences. Now down the bottom you just have to follow the prompts to make the new words, which you have done a little bit of by now. Right, we're looking at affixes today, both prefixes and suffixes, and then down the bottom we're looking at verb families and adjectives, and we've put some tricky ones in here. So let's work from the top of the page down. Initially we're starting off with prefixes and suffixes change the meaning of base words. So quite often you'll find the prefix changes the meaning and the suffix changes its form. So usually prefixes are pretty easy to spell and write or add to a word. The suffixes are a little bit trickier because you have to remember some of the rules that apply. So add an appropriate prefix to each of the base words here. So we're looking at unre, en, dismiss. You'll notice with miss you're dropping one of the S's, so you're only using one S when miss is used as a prefix. Now down here you have to add the appropriate suffix to each word. So you've got full, nest, less, est, en and lee. So here you can see that with full, when it's used as a word on its own, it has two L's. When we use it as a suffix to add to the end of a word, we drop one L. Ness and less, however, we keep the double S on both of those. And S we know form adjectives. They mean commonly they mean add the meaning of more or most to a word, which forms comparatives and superlatives. And we have en and ly we commonly add to the end of a word to form an adverb. So you can work your way through that. You may need to discuss them within your group. Now down here we've got revision of verb families, and here it says there's a warning, be careful when changing the tense. Now you know if you have a consonant before a Y and you're adding a vowel suffix, you have to leave the Y there with the ing, because if you change the Y to an I here you would have double I in the word, and English words never have double I in them. We still need that sound, so we can't get rid of it. We can't just write C-A-R-R-I-N-G. That will be carring. We need ing. So we still need that vowel sound coming from the Y there. But when we're adding ed or es, we can change the Y to an I before we add the ed and the es, because we won't end up with the double I, of course, because they start with e's. So just be careful as you work your way through those. Think carefully about whether you're changing the Y to an I or not, but don't get rid of that vowel sound. Now down here we've already discussed that comparatives and superlatives form adjectives, and once again, if you have that consonant before the Y, we need to change that Y to an I before we add the ER and the EST. If there was a vowel before the Y, we wouldn't change it, of course. So you're going to have room room erst. You can't get rid of the Y completely. You can't have roomer and roomest. That wouldn't sound right and it wouldn't make sense. So just remember, you've got to keep the vowel sound, so you're going to change the Y representing that sound to the I. They're commonly changed about, replaced by each other. So you can work through those as well. If you have any difficulty, discuss it within your group, but just be careful in thinking as you do the page.